It seems to be one of those things that's low-hanging fruit. You don't need a lot of equipment, and really you don't need any. You just need a person holding your feet. You can do it anywhere. I want to ask you this question, but there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of evidence to say that if you do it before training or after training or whenever, that one is better than the other. A couple of these studies that are included, or at least one of them, just had the coaches include the Nordic at some point in their training program. They weren't instructed to include it at a certain point. Now there may be a more optimal way to do that, but it's almost like the question is at this point, why wouldn't you do it? We know it's not going to hurt
Yeah.
anything.
Well, I think that's very, very true. So there are definitely questions around that. I think it gets a little bit into the compliance again and getting them to do it at all. And so for me, I think we've done ourselves a disservice by calling these prevention exercises. I just used air quotes there, and to kind of zone them off in a way. For me, if I was part of a team right now, like I would work really hard with the strength and conditioning and athletic coaches and say, look, this is part of their program, man. Like, let's just put it in the gym. They're doing this as a set. However that works in what the strength and conditioning team has planned for them from a performance point of view. The groups from Australia, so Tony Shields at Queensland University of Technology and then David Opar at the Australian Catholic University, these groups have really shown us that you might only need to do 2 sets of 4 a week to get a preventative effect. So that's 4 minutes, maybe, let's say 10 at most, to get like a 50% reduction in injuries. That's a lot of bang for your buck. So these groups are showing us that it might not be that hard to implement them. Now, I will say this. It's like, if we use the analogy, like, there's lots of opinion about, we should use different exercises that's more hip dominant, more knee dominant. You should include both. Probably not a bad idea. But it's a little bit like making your kids eat vegetables, I think. Like they just don't like the idea of it. So if you change the vegetable, they're not going to suddenly go, great, broccoli. The Brussels sprouts were horrible, but broccoli I love. It's about getting them to understand the value and buying into why they need this. And I think that's really where we need to go. So there's probably going to be, athletes in your team who don't like this exercise, who don't respond well to it. And I'm not saying we shouldn't individualize, but on the whole, this is just a really good idea.
You're seeing the compliance thing actually in some of the studies that you included in one of the GAB article. 50% of the enrolled athletes declined to participate, so they just didn't do it. In another of the included studies, I'm going to butcher this last name, but Inga Bretson.
Pretty good.
Okay, thanks. So 63% reported not being compliant with any of the exercise. So 2/3 of the subjects in the study admitted doing 0 sessions of the intervention.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing that even within the studies, this compliance issue. And clinically, when we're working with teams, we see the same thing that you described. Some of these athletes just don't like doing this exercise. It's foreign to them. It's kind of weird. You're like, they're not lifting weights. Some of them like lifting weights, and so you have that like framing effect where lifting weights must be giving you something different than this exercise here where a person's just holding my feet. Number 2, they're hard to do. It's not an easy exercise, and it's a purposeful supramaximal movement. So most athletes are getting overpowered by gravity during the exercise, and that makes you feel like you're not getting anything out of it. And that's a question that I wanted to ask you, because I see a lot of coaches and clinicians actually modifying the movement. But that, in my understanding, is that takes away the point of the movement. We want it to be super maximal. What are your thoughts about modifying the movement, or do you need to modify the movement, or does the athlete just need to do it to the best of their ability?
I think the important point there, and I think we can say that with some confidence, is this has to be a super maximal exercise. So if you start to get really good at this, and you have the training effect, I mean, it comes down to the same principles of training, right? You need a stimulus that's big enough to drive adaptation, because if you don't, then you simply won't get it. Now, I say that knowing that on one end, we're looking for performance. You're actually looking to get stronger, faster. And at this side, we might not do that. We might just really want the preventative effect. But I think to continue getting benefit from the exercise, it needs to be supramaximal. So what I do think we should emphasize is the Nordic hamstring exercise, as it is described, is really focused on the eccentric component of the movement. So if you're getting the guys to pop back up concentrically, you're going to they're going to get tired way sooner, because you're going to overload them with that concentric action. So it really has to focus on that eccentric, lowering your body down, keeping your hip and spine as straight as aligned as neutral, let's say. But I don't think you have to be too strict about that. It's really about being able to lower your body to the ground. If you can do that with absolute ease, then I think you need to add some weight to really get some benefit from the exercise. And that's about as much modification as I would say you need if you're doing this exercise for a preventative or let's say strengthening, conditioning effect.
So for the athlete who says, I just fall to the floor, I can't hold myself at all, then to that you say, that's the point, try as hard as you can. Flex into your partner's hands as hard as you can and just do your best. And
I'd be worried about how they'd get out of their car, but I think that's, and so there's misconceptions around this exercise, in my opinion. There's coaches in the States, and I respect their opinion, that they feel strongly that this exercise is not that valuable, that they can replace it. I just think you can't find, like, you need to show that thing, right? Like, you need to actually do a study and show me that this is detrimental, because there's no evidence for that. And then there is a delayed onset of muscle soreness initially, but in most of the studies that actually reports this, that's done really, really quickly. So one of the co-authors on this systematic review, Fergal Bien, who's a clinical physiotherapist from Ireland, he's actually looking into if that DOMS persists, and it seems like it doesn't, or whether there's maybe other aches and pains that is more prominent. So I'm looking forward to those results. But in terms of muscle soreness, that quickly dissipates. And if you get this into your routine, this is not an exercise that's going to cause you a lot of discomfort. So I think those myths around the exercise is really, part of I'm the same. I'm sure we're all the same. If you're playing football or soccer or tennis or golf, like, you just want to play. You don't really want to do your warm-up stretches. You don't really want to do your cool-down stuff, and you definitely don't want to do your squats in the gym. But we know, and especially for our professional athletes, these are the things that's going to give longevity to your career, aid your performance, and reduce your risk of injury. So you got to do it.